In Finland, a girl stands in the snow, but disappears when you get close. In Chile, a town hides inside fog, and it changes when you enter. 2 places, 1 rule: if you see them, don't follow. In the far north of Finland, there was a village so small that many maps did not bother to name it. It sat between endless forests of black pine and a frozen lake that remained locked in ice for most of the year. In winter, the sun barely touched the land. Daylight arrived weak and gray, then disappeared almost as quickly as it came. The rest of the time, the village lived inside a long blue darkness, broken only by lamplight in frosted windows and the pale shimmer of snow under the moon. The villagers called the place Kalevala. It was beautiful in the way abandoned churches were beautiful, silent, cold, and carrying something heavy in the air that no one wanted to speak about. When photographer Aino Lehtinen arrived there in late December, she noticed the silence first. Not ordinary silence, not the calm silence of nature. On this was something deeper, stranger, the kind of silence that made even your own breathing sound wrong. Aino had traveled from Helsinki to photograph the Finnish winter for an international travel magazine. She was 28, practical, and unimpressed by ghost stories. She believed in weather, bad roads, broken engines, and poor human judgment. She did not believe in curses, wandering spirits, or old village legends whispered by frightened people who had spent too much of their lives isolated by snow. That was exactly why Kalevala interested her. It looked untouched, mysterious, ancient, perfect for photographs. She rented a room in an old wooden lodge at the edge of the village, where a widow named Marja Saarinen lived alone, and rented out 2 spare rooms to travelers during the winter season. The lodge was warm but old. Its walls creaked at night. Wind sighed through its beams. The wooden floorboards groaned under every step, as if the house resented being disturbed. Marja herself was a thin woman in her 70s, with pale eyes, silver hair, and a face that looked permanently tired. She spoke softly, as though she feared being overheard by something outside. That first evening, while snow tapped gently against the windows and a pot of salmon soup steamed between them, Marja asked Aino where she planned to go the next day. "The forest ridge to the north," Aino said, "and maybe the lake if the weather stays clear." Marja stopped stirring her tea. Then she said very quietly, "Do not go beyond the north ridge after dusk." Aino smiled. "Why? Wolves?" Marja did not smile back. "I would rather it be wolves." Aino gave a short laugh, expecting the old woman to continue with some local myth. When Marja stayed silent, the laughter faded on its own. "You're serious," Aino said. Marja looked toward the dark window. "If you see someone standing alone in the snow, do not walk toward her." Aino leaned back in her chair. "Her?" Marja nodded once. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind moved across the frozen ground with a long whispering sound. "Who is she?" Aino asked, but Marja only replied, "Just do not follow." The next morning, the sky hung low and white over Kalevala. Snow covered everything: rooftops, fences, tree branches, even the narrow road entering the village. The world looked buried alive. Aino, dressed in layers, packed her camera, batteries, thermos, and tripod, then stepped outside into the bitter air. It bit through the scarf over her face and made her eyelashes damp with frost almost instantly. The village behind her seemed half asleep. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. A chimney smoked. Then, even those small signs of life disappeared as she walked north. The forest grew denser farther from the village. Tall pines stood black against the white world, their branches heavy with snow. The path narrowed. Soon there was no path at all, only stretches of untouched snow and the occasional mark of fox tracks or bird wings. Aino spent hours taking photographs, a stand of frozen birch trees silvered by morning frost, a raven perched alone on a dead branch, the frozen edge of the lake gleaming like glass under the pale daylight. She felt alive out there, focused, calm. Whatever strange warning Marja had given her the night before now seemed almost embarrassing. There was nothing in this landscape except cold, silence, and beauty. By afternoon, a light wind had begun to rise. Aino had moved beyond the ridge by then, into a wider open stretch where the forest thinned and the ground became a snow-covered marshland. The light had turned flatter, grayer. The sky seemed lower. Snow dust skated across the surface in faint ripples. She adjusted her lens, looking for one last wide shot before heading back. That was when she saw her, a little girl, standing alone in the snow. Far ahead, near the line where the dark forest met the white field, the child stood perfectly still. She looked about 10 years old. Her hair was pale blonde, almost white against the snow. She wore a thin dress, old-fashioned and far too light for the weather. No coat, no gloves, no boots, just bare legs and silence. At first, Aino thought she was seeing things. She blinked hard and looked again. The girl was still there. "Hey!" Aino shouted, lowering the camera. "Are you okay?" No answer. The child did not move. Aino's heart kicked once in her chest, not from fear yet, but from confusion. No child should have been out there, not alone, not dressed like that. She began walking forward, boots sinking into deep snow. "Hey!" she called again. "Can you hear me?" The girl remained motionless. Aino raised her camera and zoomed in. The image trembled slightly in the lens from the wind, then sharpened. The girl's face came into focus. It was pale, too pale. Her skin had the dull whiteness of something frozen for too long, yet her lips were faintly blue. Her eyes looked large and strange, not because of expression, but because there seemed to be almost none. No panic, no tears, no relief. She simply stared. Aino lowered the camera. A slow unease moved through her. She walked faster, but after another 20 steps, she realized something impossible. The distance between them had not changed. The girl looked no closer. Aino stopped, breathing hard into the cold air. She looked down at her boots, at the trail she had made behind her in the snow. She had definitely moved. She had crossed at least several meters, yet the child still stood at the same unreachable distance. Aino frowned and started again, this time almost pushing herself forward. Snow dragged at her legs. Wind cut across her face. Her pulse rose. Still, the girl did not seem any nearer. And then, a gust of wind swept loose snow off the pine branches in a sudden white veil. Aino threw up a hand to shield her eyes. It lasted only a second. When she looked again, the girl was gone. Aino froze. The field ahead lay empty and untouched. No figure, no movement, no footprints, only snow. She turned slowly in a full circle, scanning the marsh, the trees, the distant rise of land. Nothing. No child running, no sign anyone had been there at all. Her mouth went dry. It took her several seconds to make herself walk to the place where she thought the girl had stood. When she reached it, the snow was smooth and perfect, without a single mark. No bare footprints, no shoes, no disturbance, as if no one had ever stood there. Aino stared down at it, her stomach tightening. By the time she returned to the lodge, dusk had already fallen, and the blue dark of evening had swallowed the village whole. Warm yellow light glowed from the windows, but instead of comfort, it gave her a strange sense of isolation, as if the lodge were the only living thing for miles. Maria opened the door before Aino could knock. The old woman took one look at her face and stepped aside without speaking. Inside, Aino removed her gloves slowly. Her hands felt numb even in the heat. "There was a child," she said. Maria closed the door. "Where?" "North Marshland, near the ridge." Aino swallowed. "A little girl, blonde hair, white dress. She was standing in the snow." Maria said nothing. "I walked toward her, but—" Aino stopped. Saying it aloud made it sound absurd. "She never got closer. Then she vanished." The silence that followed seemed to thicken the air in the room. Maria moved to the stove and poured tea into a cup, though her hands trembled slightly. "You saw her," she whispered. Aino frowned. "Who?" Maria looked up. "The snow girl." Aino let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "No, I saw a real child." "You saw her." Aino's patience wore thin. "With respect, I know what I saw, but there has to be an explanation." Maria placed the tea in front of her. "Then explain the footprints." Aino said nothing. The old woman sat across from her. In the firelight, her face looked older than before. My sister saw her in January of 1978, Marya said. She was 17. She told me there was a girl standing beyond the trees wearing white. 3 nights later, my sister opened the door after midnight and walked into the snow. Aino stared at her. We found her at sunrise, Marya continued, standing on the frozen lake. Her eyes were open. There were no footprints leading there. Aino looked away. She wanted to dismiss the story, but a small part of her could not forget the empty field, the untouched snow, and the impossible distance that never seemed to shrink. That night, after dinner, she sat on the edge of her bed reviewing her photos. Tree lines, ice, snowdrifts, the raven, the marsh. Then she found the image. The little girl stood far in the distance, exactly where Aino had first seen her. Blurry, but unmistakable. Aino zoomed in. The face was not clear enough to make out details, but the ground around her was. No footprints. Aino's skin tightened. But she moved to the next image. The girl was gone. The next one after that made her breath stop. The girl had reappeared, but this time she was turned slightly more toward the camera. Aino frowned. She did not remember taking a third shot. She clicked again. The fourth image showed only the field and trees, but near the far right edge of the frame, half hidden among the dark pines, there was something else, something tall, too tall, a shape that looked almost human, but thin and wrong, as if it had been stretched. Aino stared until her eyes hurt, trying to decide whether it was a trick of shadow. Then the laptop screen flickered once and went black. Her room fell silent. Outside the window, snow drifted down through darkness. Aino shut the laptop and told herself it was just the cold affecting the battery. She changed clothes, got into bed, and turned off the lamp. For a long time she could not sleep. The lodge creaked around her. Wind pressed softly against the walls. Somewhere downstairs, pipes ticked faintly in the heat. She lay still, replaying the scene in the marsh over and over again. A child standing where no child should be. A child who never came closer. A child who vanished without leaving a trace. Eventually, exhaustion pulled her under. She did not know how long she slept before the sound woke her. Tap. Aino opened her eyes. Darkness. She listened. Tap. 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 It was coming from the window. Her body went rigid beneath the blankets. The room was on the second floor. Outside the window, there was only a steep drop into the snow-covered yard below. Tap. 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 Aino sat up slowly, her pulse hammering in her throat. The moonlight filtering through the curtains was thin and blue, enough to show the shape of the window, enough to show a shadow behind it. She could barely breathe. Tap. Something small touched the glass again. With shaking fingers, Aino reached out and pulled the curtain aside. The little girl was standing outside the window, not below it, level with it. Her face hovered just beyond the glass, pale and still, her blonde hair hanging motionless in the windless dark. Her eyes were fixed directly on Aino. Aino jerked backward with a cry. The girl lifted one hand. Very slowly, she placed her bare fingertips against the glass. Frost bloomed instantly beneath them, spreading in white veins across the pane. Then, with one finger, the girl traced a single word into the frost. "Come," Aino screamed. She stumbled off the bed, knocking the lamp to the floor. It shattered. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. The bedroom door flew open. Marya rushed inside, lantern in hand. "What happened?" Aino pointed wildly at the window. She was there. Marya went to the curtain and pulled it wide. The yard outside lay empty beneath the moon. No girl, no movement, only falling snow. But on the glass, still bright in the lantern light, was the word written in ice. "Come." Marya stared at it in horror. Then she whispered, "She has chosen you." Aino backed away. "What does that mean?" Marya turned toward her slowly, and in the trembling lantern light, her face looked like the face of someone remembering an old nightmare. "It means she will come closer now," Marya said. "First in the field, then at the window." She paused. Our Aino felt her stomach twist, and then Marya's voice dropped almost to nothing. Then she tries to bring you outside. Aino didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Even after Marya left the room, even after the lantern glow faded and the house settled back into its quiet creaking, Aino remained sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the window. The frost had slowly begun to fade, but the word was still there. Come. It wasn't just written, it felt intentional, like something had been waiting long before she arrived. Like the moment she saw that girl in the snow, something invisible had shifted, and now it knew her. The hours dragged, every small sound made her flinch, the wind, the wooden beams, the distant crack of ice outside. At one point she heard something else, soft, faint, footsteps, not outside, inside the lodge, slow, uneven, like bare feet touching wood. Aino held her breath. The sound came from the hallway. One step, odd pause, another step, then nothing. She didn't move, she didn't dare open the door. By the time morning light finally crept through the window, weak and gray, she felt more exhausted than rested. Downstairs, Marya was already awake, sitting near the stove with a cup of black coffee. She looked worse than the night before. You heard it too, Marya said without looking up. Aino nodded. Footsteps. Marya exhaled slowly. It starts like this. Aino sat across from her. I'm leaving today. Marya gave a small, tired smile. You can try. After breakfast, Aino packed quickly. Camera, laptop, batteries, everything. She stepped outside. The cold hit her like a wall. The village looked different. Still, too still. Even the usual signs of life were gone. No dog barking, no smoke from chimneys, no distant movement, as if everything had paused. Aino walked to her car, brushing snow off the windshield. Her breath came out in short, white bursts. She opened the door, got inside, and turned the key. Nothing. No engine. No sound. She tried again. Dead. Her chest tightened. She stepped back out, lifting the hood. The battery cables looked fine. Nothing seemed broken. But the car felt wrong. Like it had been drained of something. Not just power. Something else. Marya stood in the doorway of the lodge watching. I told you, she said quietly. Aino slammed the hood shut. This is ridiculous. It's just the cold. Batteries fail in this weather. Marya didn't argue. That silence was worse than disagreement. They spent the late morning inside. Aino tried calling for help. No signal. She moved around the lodge, checking windows, checking doors, trying to ground herself in logic. But logic was slipping, because near the front entrance, she saw them. Footprints. Small. Bare. Wet. They began at the door and led inside. Aino stared at them. They crossed the wooden floor slowly, one after another, leaving faint melted marks in the grain. They went down the hallway, toward the stairs. Her heart began to pound. Marya, she whispered. The old woman came closer. She saw them and closed her eyes for a moment, like someone accepting something inevitable. She doesn't wait outside anymore, Marya said. Aino's throat went dry. She came in. Marya didn't answer, because the answer was already there, in the footprints. They led up the stairs, to Aino's room. Aino ran. She took the stairs two at a time and pushed her bedroom door open. Everything looked normal. At first. Then she saw the desk. Her laptop was open. The screen was on. She was certain she had shut it. Slowly, she stepped closer. The image viewer was open. Her photos, but not the same ones. There were more. Images she didn't remember taking. The first one showed the snowfield again. The girl in the distance. The second, closer. The third, closer still. Aino's breath caught. The fourth image. The girl was facing the camera fully now, and she was smiling. Not a child's smile. Something wrong. Something empty. Aino clicked to the next image. Her hands started shaking. The girl wasn't in the distance anymore. She was standing just a few meters away, and behind her, shapes, tall, thin, standing between the trees, watching. Aino clicked again. The next image made her drop the mouse, because now, the girl was right in front of the camera, so close her face filled the frame, her eyes pale, cracked, her skin like frozen glass, and just behind her shoulder, something leaned forward, something that wasn't human. The screen flickered, then new text appeared at the bottom of the image, not part of the camera settings, not a timestamp, something else. "You saw me." Aino stumbled backward. "No." The text changed. "Now I see you." Aino slammed the laptop shut. By afternoon, the temperature inside the lodge began to drop, even with the fire burning, even with the heater running. A faint mist formed in the hallway, like breath in cold air. Marya placed small lines of salt near the windows and doorways. She hung a small iron bell above the front entrance. Aino watched, trying to hold on to reality. "What is that supposed to do?" Marya answered quietly. "It reminds her she is not welcome." Aino almost laughed, but she couldn't, because deep down, something in her believed it. As evening fell, the world outside disappeared into darkness again. The storm didn't return, but the silence did, heavier than before, thicker, like something listening. Aino sat near the window, unable to stop herself from looking out. At first, nothing. Then, movement. Her breath stopped. In the snow outside the lodge, footprints, more than before, dozens, maybe more. They circled the house round and round, like something had been walking in loops, waiting. Then she saw her, the snow girl, standing in the center of the yard, closer than ever. Her head tilted slightly, watching. Aino whispered, "She's here." Marya came to the window and froze, because behind the girl, the shadows had returned. Not just one, not just two, many, standing between the trees, tall, motionless, wrong. Aino's voice trembled. "What are those?" Marya's face went pale. "They followed her." "Who are they?" Marya swallowed hard. "The ones who didn't come back." Aino's stomach dropped. Outside, the girl raised her hand slowly and pointed at the front door. Then she spoke. Her voice carried through the glass, soft, childlike, but empty. They were cold too. Aino felt her chest tighten. The shadows behind her shifted slightly, not moving, but becoming clearer. Some looked like people, others did not. Then, a sound from upstairs, heavy, slow, thud. Aino turned. "Did you hear that?" Another step. Thud. Something was walking, above them. But there was no one upstairs, no one. Aino's breath came fast. "That's not possible." Marya didn't speak. Her eyes were locked on the ceiling. Another step, closer to the stairs. Thud. The wooden boards creaked. Dust fell faintly from the ceiling. Then, the sound of something dragging, like bare feet sliding slowly across wood. Aino's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's inside." Marya grabbed her arm. "Do not go up." But it was too late, because at the top of the stairs, a shadow appeared, small, child-sized, standing in the darkness, watching them. Aino's heart felt like it stopped. The snow girl was still outside. She could see her, standing in the yard. So then, who was this? The shadow stepped forward, into the dim light. It was her, the same girl. But not the same. Her face was wrong. Part of it cracked, her mouth slightly open, too wide, too still. She looked down at Aino and spoke. "You took my picture." Aino couldn't move. The girl tilted her head. "Now I can stay." At that exact moment, every light in the lodge went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Only the faint blue glow of snow outside remained. And in that darkness, Aino heard something worse than footsteps. She heard breathing, not one, many, all around her. Aino understood then. This wasn't just something outside anymore. It wasn't just a figure in the snow. It had crossed something invisible, a boundary, through the image, through the moment she looked, through the act of seeing, and now, it was inside. From the darkness, the child's voice whispered again, closer this time. right beside her ear. Why didn't you come outside? Aino felt something cold brush her hand, like frozen fingers. She screamed, and the sound vanished into the endless watching silence. Aino screamed, but the sound didn't feel like it left her throat. It was swallowed, consumed by the dark. For a moment, she wasn't sure if she'd made any sound at all. The lodge was completely black now. No electricity, no lantern, only the faint, cold blue glow from the snow outside slipping through the windows. And in that dim light, she could feel them, not see, feel, breathing, close, too close, slow, uneven breaths surrounding her. Maria's grip tightened around Aino's arm. "Don't move," she whispered, but something brushed past Aino's shoulder, cold, wet, like frozen skin. Aino gasped. Behind her, a voice, soft, childlike, right at her ear. "Come." Aino jerked away violently. "No." At that exact moment, Maria struck something metal in the darkness. A sharp ringing sound exploded through the house. A bell. The sound cut through the silence like a blade. Instantly, the breathing stopped. The pressure in the room shifted. Aino staggered, pulling in air like she had been underwater. "Move," Maria said. "Now." They stumbled toward the front door, guided only by memory and instinct. Aino's hands brushed along the wall until she found the handle. She opened it. The cold hit them like a physical force, but the moment they stepped outside, Aino realized something was wrong. The world had changed. The lodge behind them looked distant, as if it had moved, or they had. The yard seemed larger, the trees farther away, and in the center, she stood, the snow girl, closer than ever before. Her head tilted, her eyes locked on Aino. Behind her, the shadows stretched longer, darker, like tall figures standing at the edge of reality. Maria stepped forward, raising the small iron bell again. "Do not listen to her," she whispered, "no matter what you hear." Aino nodded, but her heart was already racing, because the girl began to walk, slowly, not toward the lodge, toward the lake, and something inside Aino pulled, not forced, not controlled, pulled, like gravity, like her body remembered something her mind did not. "Stay with me," Maria said firmly, grabbing her arm, but Aino's eyes stayed locked on the girl. "She wants us to follow," Aino whispered. Maria's voice dropped. "Yes." "Then why are we?" "Because we have to end this where it began." The forest path toward the lake felt wrong, not just dark, distorted. The trees seemed taller, thinner, and their branches twisted unnaturally under the weight of snow. Every step felt heavier. The silence pressed against their ears, and behind them, Aino was certain, footsteps followed, more than two, many more. But when she turned, nothing, only snow. The frozen lake appeared slowly through the trees, a wide, endless sheet of white, covered in mist, and standing across its surface, figures, dozens, still, frozen upright. Aino's breath caught. "They're people," Maria nodded, her face pale. They followed her. The snow girl stepped onto the ice, no hesitation, no sound. The ice didn't crack, didn't shift. She walked as if it was solid ground. Then she stopped, in the center, and turned, waiting. Aino felt it again, that pull, stronger now. Her chest tightened, her mind blurred. From the mist, a voice came, familiar, soft. "Aino." She froze. No, that voice, it couldn't be. "Come here," it said gently. A shape began to form in the fog. A woman, her mother, exactly as Aino remembered. Same face, same eyes, same warmth. Aino's vision blurred. No, this isn't real. But the voice, it felt real. Too real. "You're cold," her mother said. "Come to me." Aino took a step forward. Marja grabbed her arm hard. "Don't." Aino shook her head. "You don't understand." "I do," Maria snapped. "It takes what you want most." The voice changed. Now it sounded like Aino herself. "It's okay. Just come." Then another voice, a child's laughter, then whispers. then crying, all blending together, all calling, all pulling. Aino fell to her knees, hands over her ears, but it didn't matter. The voices weren't outside, they were inside her head, inside her thoughts, inside her memory. She looked up and saw something worse. Among the figures on the ice, one of them was her, standing still, eyes open, waiting. "No," Aino whispered. The snow girl stepped closer, now only a few feet away. Her face cracked like frozen porcelain, her lips parted, and for the first time, Aino saw what was inside, not flesh, not bone, darkness, moving, endless. The girl spoke, but not with one voice, with many, layered, echoing. "I was lost. I was cold. I was alone." Aino's breath trembled. The girl took another step. "Then I found them." The mist behind her shifted. The figures moved slightly, not alive, not dead, something in between. "Now I am never alone." Aino shook her head, tears freezing on her skin. "What are you?" The girl smiled wider. Her face split further, cracks spreading. "Winter remembers." The ice beneath them groaned, a low, deep sound, like something waking beneath it. "When someone dies alone?" The mist thickened. The figures leaned forward, watching, hungry. "Something answers." Aino felt her body move, standing, walking, toward the girl. She tried to stop, but next part Chile, the fog town. There was a town in southern Chile that did not exist on most maps. Even when it did, people rarely noticed it. Its name was Puerto Nieblas, Port of Fog. It sat between the cold Pacific coast and a stretch of dark, endless hills. Pine trees covered the slopes, their silhouettes jagged against a sky that was almost always gray. The ocean was close enough to hear but rarely seen. A thick, creeping fog rolled in from the water nearly every evening, swallowing the streets whole. The locals didn't mind, they were used to it, but they followed one rule. When the fog came, they stayed inside. Mateo Rojas didn't believe in rules like that. A documentary filmmaker from Santiago, Mateo had spent years chasing strange places and forgotten stories. When he first heard about Puerto Nieblas, it sounded perfect. An isolated coastal town, permanent fog, and whispers of people getting lost. Urban legend, atmosphere, content, exactly what he needed. He arrived just before sunset. The road into Puerto Nieblas felt wrong from the start. It twisted through dense forest, the trees growing unnaturally close together. The air felt damp, heavier than usual, and by the time Mateo saw the first houses, the fog had already begun to roll in. At first it was thin, a light mist brushing the ground. Then it thickened, slowly, deliberately, like something spreading. Mateo parked his car near the center of town and stepped out. The silence hit him immediately. No traffic, no voices, just the distant, hollow sound of waves somewhere beyond the fog. A few streetlights flickered on, casting weak yellow halos that barely pushed back the gray. The buildings were old, wooden, paint peeling, windows fogged from the inside. It looked abandoned, but it wasn't, because someone was watching. Mateo could feel it. He checked into a small guest house owned by an older man named Don Esteban. The man barely spoke during check-in. He handed Mateo a key, avoided eye contact, and said only one thing before turning away. "Stay inside when the fog thickens." Mateo smirked slightly. "That bad, huh?" Don Esteban didn't smile. Worse. By the time Mateo got to his room, the fog had taken over completely. From the window, the street below was gone. Not hidden. Gone. The light from the street lamp outside barely reached halfway across the glass before disappearing into gray nothingness. Mateo took out his camera. This was perfect. He started recording. "Puerto Nieblas," he said quietly into the lens. "A town where the fog never leaves, and neither do the stories." He zoomed toward the window. At first, nothing. Then, movement. Mateo frowned. He stepped closer. Something had just passed through the fog. A shape, tall, not quite human. He adjusted the focus. Nothing there, just fog. He let out a breath and laughed softly. Great, I'm already seeing things. But he didn't stop recording. An hour later, hunger pushed him downstairs. The guest house dining area was dimly lit. A few locals sat scattered across tables eating quietly. No one spoke loudly. No one laughed. The air felt tense. Matteo ordered food and sat near the window. He noticed something strange almost immediately. No one was looking outside, not even once. Even when the fog pressed thick against the glass, even when faint shapes seemed to move within it, everyone kept their eyes down. "Excuse me," Matteo said to the woman at the next table. She hesitated before looking up. "What happens if you go out there?" he asked, nodding toward the window. Her expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. "You don't come back the same," she said. Matteo leaned forward. "What does that mean?" She shook her head. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." She glanced around the room, lowered her voice. "When the fog comes, the town changes." Matteo frowned. "Changes how?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Not everything you see is real." That was enough. Matteo stood up. He grabbed his camera. "Where are you going?" Don Esteban's voice cut through the room. "Outside," Matteo said. A chair scraped loudly as someone stood. "Come, don't," the woman said. But Matteo was already moving. He stepped toward the front door. The fog pressed against the glass like something alive. He hesitated for just a second, then opened it. Cold air rushed in. Not just cold, wet, heavy, like breathing through water. Matteo stepped outside. The door closed behind him with a dull thud. Instantly, the world disappeared. The street was gone. The buildings were gone. Even the light from the guest house faded behind him. There was only fog, endless, silent. Matteo lifted his camera. "This is insane," he whispered. His voice sounded wrong, muted, like the fog swallowed it. He turned slowly, trying to orient himself. Then, footsteps, not his, somewhere ahead, soft, slow. Matteo froze. "Hello?" he called. No answer. The footsteps continued, crunching lightly, would like someone walking over gravel or broken glass. Matteo swallowed. "Hey, is someone there?" The sound stopped. Silence. Then, a shape, forming in the fog. A figure, standing still, tall, thin, facing him. Matteo raised the camera, zoomed in. The image struggled to focus, but he could make out a face, except something was wrong. The features didn't sit correctly. Eyes too far apart, mouth slightly too wide, like a person, built from memory instead of reality. Matteo took a step back. The figure didn't move, but it felt closer. "Okay, not funny," Matteo said, forcing a laugh. He turned slightly, just for a moment, then looked back. The figure was gone. Matteo exhaled sharply. "Just fog," he muttered. Just fog messing with depth perception. He turned to go back, and froze. The guest house wasn't there. The street wasn't there. Nothing was. Just fog, in every direction. Matteo's pulse spiked. No, no, no. He spun slowly, trying to find anything familiar. A light, a sound, a shape. Nothing. Then, behind him, a voice. Soft, familiar. "Matteo." He turned instantly, his breath caught, because standing in the fog was his brother, dead for 3 years. Same face, same jacket, same expression. Matteo's hands trembled. "That's not real." The figure smiled. "Why did you leave me?" it asked. Matteo stepped back. "No, you're not." The face shifted, glitched. For a split second, it wasn't his brother. It was something else, something hollow. Then it snapped back. "Stay," it said softly. The fog around it moved, shapes forming, more figures, watching, waiting. Matteo stumbled backward. "No, stay away." The figures didn't chase him, they didn't need to, because wherever he turned, they were there, closer, each time. The fog thickened, pressing in, suffocating. Matteo started running, blind, desperate. His breath came in sharp bursts. His heart pounded in his ears. The ground beneath him changed. From road, to dirt, to something uneven. He tripped and fell hard. The camera hit the ground. The screen flickered, still recording. Matteo pushed himself up and looked around. The fog thinned slightly, just enough to reveal something impossible. The town, but not the same. The buildings were twisted, older, broken, windows shattered, doors hanging open, streetlights dead, and in every doorway, figures, standing, watching. Matteo's blood ran cold. This isn't the same town," a voice whispered behind him. "It's the real one." Matteo turned, but no one was there. Then the whisper came again, closer, right beside his ear. "The fog shows what's underneath." Matteo grabbed his camera, backed away slowly. No, this isn't real. But deep down, he knew it was, because the town he had entered was just a mask, and this was something else, something waiting, something that only appeared when the fog came. From somewhere in the distance, a bell rang, faint, echoing. The figures turned, all at once, toward the sound. Then, they began to move, not walking, not running, sliding, toward him. Matteo's breath stopped, and in that moment, he understood the warning, the silence, the fear in everyone's eyes. When the fog comes, the town does not disappear. It changes. Matteo ran. He did not know where he was going. He only knew that the things moving through the fog behind him were getting closer, and every instinct in his body screamed that, if they touched him, something worse than death would happen. The camera swung wildly in his hand, half recording the ground, half catching brief flashes of the town around him. Buildings slid in and out of the mist like rotting teeth. Doorways opened into darkness. Windows reflected nothing. The bell kept ringing somewhere far away, slow and hollow, as if a church deep under the earth was calling the dead back home. Matteo's boots pounded over broken stones and wet wood. His breath burned his lungs. He turned sharply down what should have been the main street, but the town no longer matched the one he had entered. The guest house was gone. The road was narrower, and the houses leaned inward as if listening. He risked a glance over his shoulder. Shapes moved through the fog, tall, thin, human only in the loosest sense. They did not run. They simply glided forward, and somehow each time Matteo looked back, they were nearer than before. "Leave me alone," he shouted. The fog swallowed the words whole. Then a voice answered, not from behind, from the side, soft and close. "You came in." Matteo spun, almost slipping. A woman stood beside a rusted iron fence, half veiled by mist. She looked old, very old, wrapped in a black shawl soaked with fog. Her face was lined and colorless, but her eyes were sharp and very much alive. Matteo stumbled toward her. "Help me, please. What is this place?" She looked at him the way someone might look at a wounded animal that had wandered too deep into a trap. "You should not have opened the door," she said. "I need to get back to the guest house." She gave a dry, humorless smile. "There is no guest house here now." Matteo shook his head. "I was just there. I walked out less than 5 minutes ago." The woman lifted one thin hand and pointed at the street behind him. Matteo turned. The fog shifted just enough for him to see the outline of a sign nailed above a crooked doorway. Not the guest house, not any building he remembered. A butcher shop, long abandoned, rotten awning, broken windows, a wooden sign so worn he could barely read the painted name. When he looked back at the woman, she had not moved. "What happened to the town?" he asked. She tilted her head slightly. "Nothing happened to it. As you are seeing it." "Seeing what?" "The part it keeps buried." A chill deeper than the air moved through him. "Who are you?" "Someone who stayed too long." Before he could ask anything else, the fog behind him thickened, and several of the figures became visible again, standing at the edge of the street, watching without eyes. The woman's expression hardened. "Come." She turned and moved through a narrow alley between two sagging buildings. Matteo followed at once, nearly colliding with the wall as the mist swallowed them. The alley smelled of salt, mildew, and something faintly rotten. Overhead, wires drooped like black vines. Water dripped from gutters in slow, irregular taps. At the end of the alley stood a small chapel, or what had once been a chapel. Its wooden cross had split in two. One door hung loose on its hinges. Black stains ran down the walls like old smoke. Yet, unlike the rest of the town, there was a faint glow inside, not warm, but steady. The woman stepped in. Matteo followed. Inside, the air changed. The fog did not vanish, but it seemed thinner, weaker. The chapel was small and stripped bare except for a few ruined pews, a cracked stone basin, and rows of melted candles hardened along the floor. Symbols had been carved into the walls, crosses, circles, jagged lines that looked older than the church itself. A man sat near the altar holding a lantern. He looked up as Matteo entered. He was maybe in his 50s, broad-shouldered, with a beard gone white around the chin. His face was scarred, his eyes deeply shadowed. He held a shotgun across his lap. "He followed the bell," the old woman said. The man grunted. "Then he's lucky." Matteo stared between them. "Tell me what's happening." The man kept looking at him, measuring him. Then he said, "Sit down." Matteo remained standing. "No. First you tell me where I am." The woman closed the chapel door. "You are in Puerto Nieblas." "This isn't Puerto Nieblas." The man's gaze sharpened. "It is when the fog opens." Matteo's mouth went dry. "What does that mean?" The man set the shotgun aside and rose slowly. "Names first. I'm Rafael. She's Inez." Matteo nodded once. "Matteo." Rafael came closer to the lantern, and in that pale light, the deep exhaustion in his face became clear. "There are two towns," he said, "the one you arrived in, and the one beneath it." Matteo frowned. "That doesn't mean anything." "It will." Inez moved to the cracked basin and touched its edge with her fingertips. Long before roads were cut through the hills, there was a settlement here. Fishermen, traders, families. The coast was cruel, but the land gave enough to survive. Rafael took over. Then one winter the fog came and did not leave for 13 days. Matteo said nothing. "People disappeared," Rafael continued. "At first, one or two, then more. Doors were found open, meals left untouched, beds still warm. Those who returned..." He stopped. "They weren't right," Inez whispered. Matteo felt cold sweat gather beneath his jacket. "What happened to them?" Neither answered immediately. Finally, Rafael said, "They returned with pieces missing." "Physically?" Rafael shook his head. "No, worse." Inez looked at Matteo directly. "They forgot the people they loved. They forgot their own names. They looked at their children as if they had never seen them before. Some stood in corners and listened to walls. Some walked into the sea. Others smiled and spoke to empty rooms until their hearts stopped." Matteo's throat tightened. "You're saying the fog does something to them?" Rafael's jaw clenched. "The fog doesn't just hide the town. It changes it, or shows its true shape. Depends on which story you believe." "And the figures outside?" Inez crossed herself instinctively. "Those are the ones who stayed too long." Matteo forced a laugh, though it came out thin and weak. "You expect me to believe all this?" Rafael stepped closer. "You already do." Matteo opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Because he did believe some part of it now. He had seen his dead brother in the fog. He had seen the town rot and twist into something impossible. He had heard voices where there should have been none. Rafael seemed to read that in his silence. "The fog learns you," he said. "It looks through your memory. It finds what will make you stop, what will make you turn, what will make you follow. A face you miss, a voice you regret, a place you wish you could return to." Matteo's hands curled into fists. "My brother." Rafael nodded once. "Yes." The bell rang again outside. All three froze. This time it sounded closer. Inez turned toward the door, pale. "They found us." Rafael grabbed the lantern and motioned Matteo to the back of the chapel. "There's a cellar." "What?" "Move." There was no time to argue. Rafael shoved aside a warped piece of flooring, revealing a narrow trapdoor. Damp, moldy air rose from below. Mateo crouched and helped pull it open. The bell sounded a third time. Then came footsteps outside the chapel. Many footsteps, not hurried, patient. Inez knelt by the door and began whispering under her breath in Spanish, fingers shaking around a rosary so tightly the beads creaked. Raphael looked at Mateo. "Listen to me carefully. No matter what you hear down there, you do not answer it." Mateo stared. "What is down there?" Raphael's expression was grim. "Old things." The chapel door shuddered once. Something had touched it from outside. Inez flinched. Raphael shoved Mateo toward the opening. "Go." Mateo climbed down the ladder. The cellar was low and cold, lined with stone slick from years of moisture. Shelves sagged under jars, candles, ropes, and old fishing tools. The air smelled of earth and salt water. Above him, Raphael lowered the trapdoor, leaving only a thin crack of light. Darkness pressed close. Then the sounds began, at first just soft scraping overhead, a chair moving, wood groaning, then voices. One of them was Inez praying. Another was Raphael, speaking low and firm. Then another voice joined them. Mateo's blood turned to ice. It was his brother's voice. "Mateo," it said softly. "I found you." Mateo covered his mouth with both hands. The voice came again, directly above the trapdoor. "You left me alone." His eyes filled with tears he did not expect. "This cannot be real," he told himself. "It knows what I know. It uses what I remember." But the voice was perfect. Every inflection, every break, every familiar warmth twisted now into accusation. "You could have saved me." Mateo pressed himself back against the stone wall. Above, something moved across the trapdoor slowly, like fingers testing the wood. Then came another voice, his mother, then his own, then many voices overlapping in murmurs so soft he could not separate one from another. The cellar seemed to shrink. The air thinned. The stone walls sweated with moisture. Mateo shut his eyes and tried to breathe through the rising panic. A hard crash exploded overhead. Someone shouted. The lantern light vanished from the crack. Then a gunshot thundered through the chapel. Mateo jumped so violently he nearly fell. Silence followed. Absolute silence. He waited. Seconds stretched. Then he heard Raphael's voice above, ragged and urgent. "Mateo, come out." Mateo moved toward the ladder, then stopped. Raphael had told him not to answer anything, not to trust what he heard. His hand hovered in the darkness. Then Raphael spoke again. "Mateo, it's me. They're gone." A pause. Then, very softly, from just beside the ladder, "Mateo." His own voice, close enough to feel. Something in the darkness smiled. Mateo recoiled with a strangled gasp and slammed himself against the far wall. He had heard it, not from above, from inside the cellar. He was not alone. Very slowly, he turned. The darkness in the far corner looked thicker than the rest, too dense, too shaped. Then it moved, just a little. A figure unfolded from the black, taller than the room should allow, its head bent against the ceiling, limbs too long, joints wrong. It had no clear face, only the shifting suggestion of one. Sometimes his brother, sometimes himself, sometimes a stranger with a mouth stretched too wide. Mateo couldn't breathe. The thing leaned forward. Its voice was a wet whisper made from many others. We were under the town before the fog. Mateo's back hit stone. Nowhere to go. Above him, the trapdoor burst open and pale light spilled down. Raphael's arm reached in with the lantern. "Mateo!" The figure in the cellar snapped its head upward with a crack like frozen wood. Mateo lunged for the ladder. Something cold brushed his ankle. He screamed and kicked free, scrambling upward with desperate force. Raphael seized his jacket and hauled him into the chapel. Mateo collapsed on the floorboards, gasping. Inez was gone. The front pew lay shattered. The chapel door hung open. Fog poured in through the doorway like living breath. Raphael slammed the trapdoor shut and drove an iron hook through its latch with shaking hands. Mateo staggered to his feet. "Where's Inez?" Raphael didn't answer. He didn't need to. Outside the open door, half veiled in fog, stood a line of figures facing the chapel. and among them, Inez. She stood perfectly still. Her shawl hung damp around her shoulders, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Her eyes were open but empty, like windows in an abandoned house. Mateo whispered, "No." Raphael's face hardened into something beyond grief. "Do not look at her for too long." But Mateo already was, because Inez's lips began to move, and in a voice that was no longer hers, she said, "Now the town knows your face." The fog thickened around her. The other figures stepped forward together, and above the town, from somewhere hidden in the white dark, the bell began to ring again. If you want, I'll continue with part 3, final, 1,500 words, our darkest ending. Right now. Part 3, 1,500 words. Absolutely, here is the final part, part 3, approximately 1,500 words, darkest ending, of Chile, the fog, town Chile, the fog town. Part 3, when the fog keeps you. The bell did not stop, it rang again, and again, each toll slower than the last, deep, hollow, echoing through the fog like a heartbeat that didn't belong to anything alive. Mateo stood frozen inside the ruined chapel, his chest rising and falling too fast, his lungs struggling to pull in air that felt thick and wet. Outside, the figures moved, not walking, not running, sliding, closing the distance, and at the front, Inez, her body stiff, her head tilted too far to one side, her lips barely moving. But the voice did not belong to her anymore. "The town remembers you now." Mateo shook his head, backing away. No, this isn't real." Raphael grabbed his shoulder hard. "It is real enough to kill you," he snapped. "Listen to me. This is the last part." Mateo's eyes flicked toward him. "Last part of what?" Raphael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the open door, at the fog pushing in, at the figures waiting. Then he said quietly, "Of becoming one of them." Mateo's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Raphael let out a slow breath. "The fog doesn't just show you things. It takes pieces of you. Memory first, then identity, then what's left." Mateo shook his head violently. No, that's not. You saw your brother." Mateo froze. Raphael stepped closer. "You heard his voice. You almost followed it." Mateo's mouth went dry. "That's how it begins," Raphael said. "It finds the cracks in you. They're the things you regret, the things you lost, and it pulls." Outside, the figures took another step forward. Closer now, too close. Mateo could see their faces, or what used to be faces. Some were blank, some twisted, some flickered, changing from one person to another in broken, shifting fragments. And among them, he saw his brother again, standing just behind Inez, smiling. Mateo staggered backward. "I can't stay here." "You can't leave either," Raphael said. "Then what do we do?" Raphael's eyes hardened. "There's one way." Mateo stared. "The bell," Raphael said. "It's not a warning, it's a call." Mateo frowned. "A call to what?" Raphael looked toward the fog. "To the center." The bell rang again, louder, closer, not distant anymore. Mateo felt it in his chest this time, a vibration, a pull, on the same pull he had felt before, but stronger, more direct. "It's pulling me," Mateo whispered. Raphael nodded. "Yes, that means you're still you." Mateo looked at him, confused. "What?" "If you couldn't feel it," Raphael said quietly, "you'd already be gone." The chapel walls creaked. The fog began to seep inside, thin tendrils sliding across the floor like fingers. The figures outside stepped closer. Inez's mouth opened wider, too wide. Her voice layered, multiple tones speaking at once. "Come out. Come back. Come home." Mateo covered his ears. "No." Raphael grabbed the lantern. "We move now." They ran. Out the back of the chapel, into the fog. Mateo didn't question it anymore, didn't fight it, because staying meant death. or worse. The town shifted as they moved. Buildings stretched, roads twisted, our doorways appeared where there had been walls, and everywhere, figures, watching, waiting, not chasing, just there, as if the town itself was alive and aware. The bell grew louder. Each step brought them closer. Mateo's vision blurred. The fog thickened. His thoughts slowed. Memories flickered. His childhood, his brother, his past, faces, voices, moments, slipping, fading. No, Mateo whispered. I can't forget. Raphael grabbed him again. Stay with me. Mateo nodded weakly, but his grip on reality was slipping. Then, they saw it. The center. Not a building, not a place, a space, where the fog opened slightly, revealing something beneath. The ground was not ground. It looked like stone, ancient, cracked, and at the center, a bell tower, broken, leaning, but still standing. On the bell hung inside it, swinging slowly on its own, ringing, calling. Mateo stepped forward without thinking. Raphael grabbed him, but Mateo pulled free. I have to go there, he said. Raphael didn't stop him this time, because he knew this was the final step. Mateo walked toward the tower. The figures followed, forming a circle around him. Not touching, not yet. His brother stood among them, closer now, clearer. Mateo, he said softly, you don't have to be alone anymore. Mateo's eyes filled with tears. I left you. The figure smiled. Stay. The word echoed, not just from his brother, from everywhere. Mateo reached the tower. The bell swung above him, loud, deafening. He looked up and saw something inside it, not empty, not hollow, dark, moving, like something lived inside the sound itself. Behind him, Raphael shouted, Break it! Mateo turned slightly. What? The bell, Raphael yelled. It binds the town. Mateo looked back at it, at the thing inside, at the sound, at the pull. His hands trembled. If I break it, Raphael's voice dropped, you either wake up or you stay forever. The figures stepped closer. His brother reached out. Stay with me. Mateo closed his eyes. For a moment, he almost gave in. The fog felt warm now, comforting, soft, like sleep, like forgetting. Then, a memory hit him, sharp, clear, his brother laughing, alive, not like this, not empty, not wrong. Mateo opened his eyes. No. The word came out stronger. I'm not staying. He grabbed a loose piece of metal from the broken tower, raised it, and swung. The bell cracked. A deep, our unnatural sound exploded outward. The figures screamed, not in pain but in rage. The fog twisted violently. The ground shook. Mateo struck again. The bell split. The darkness inside spilled out, like smoke, like shadows, like something trying to escape. The figures began to break apart, flickering, shifting, fading. His brother's face twisted, then vanished. Raphael ran forward, grabbed Mateo. Now! The world collapsed. The fog surged. Then, everything went white. Silence. Mateo opened his eyes. He was lying on the ground. Cold pavement, hard, real. The fog was thin now, morning light breaking through. The town, normal, whole. People stood around him. Real people, concerned faces, voices, alive. Mateo sat up slowly, his head pounding, his memory heavy, but intact. Raphael stood nearby, alive, but older somehow, more tired. Did we? Mateo started. Raphael shook his head slowly. No. Mateo's stomach dropped. Raphael pointed toward the edge of town. The fog still lingered there, thin, waiting, and in it, just for a second, Mateo saw them, standing, watching, and at the center, Inez, her head tilted, her eyes locked on him, her lips moved. Even from that distance, he could read it. You came back. The fog shifted, and she was gone. Mateo understood then. You don't escape Puerto Nieblas, not completely, Because once the fog sees you, once it learns you, once it remembers your face, it waits for the next time. Wide aerial shot of a remote Chilean coastal town, covered in thick rolling fog, ocean barely visible, drone slowly descending into fog-covered streets, visibility fading, long shot of empty coastal road, disappearing into dense gray mist, waves crashing against rocky shore, fog swallowing the horizon, static shot of old wooden houses with fog passing slowly between them, streetlight flickering in heavy fog at dusk, dim yellow glow, close-up of wet pavement reflecting blurred light through fog, wind pushing fog across empty street like moving smoke, wide shot of harbor docks barely visible through mist, POV driving into town, windshield slowly covered in fog, medium shot of man stepping out of car, our fog wrapping around his legs, close-up of breath visible in damp cold air, tracking shot following man walking down silent street, over-shoulder shot looking into fog-filled alley, POV camera recording empty street, slight distortion from fog, close-up of old sign, Puerto Nieblas, partially hidden in mist low angle, shot of boots stepping on wet ground, wide shot showing isolation, one person in endless fog, hand touching cold wall covered in moisture, slow pan across closed windows with faint silhouettes behind curtains, interior shot of locals sitting silently in dim restaurant, view no one speaking, close-up of nervous eyes avoiding window shot of window, with fog pressing against glass like a living wall, fork dropping slowly from someone's hand in tension, wide shot of room where no one looks outside, candle flame flickering unnaturally inside room, close-up of condensation, sliding down glass door slightly opening, fog leaking inside, tracking shot toward exit door as main character approaches, close-up of hand, opening door into white void, POV stepping into dense fog, surroundings instantly disappear, sound design shot, heavy breathing, a muffled environment, wide shot of character alone in endless white space, close-up of face reacting to sudden silence, footsteps echoing unnaturally in fog, fog moving in unnatural swirling patterns around body, camera spinning slowly, showing no direction or landmarks, close-up of hand waving in front of face, barely visible, ground level shot, showing no clear path, distant shape slowly forming in fog, silhouette of tall figure barely visible in fog, zoom attempt, figure becomes distorted and unclear, close-up of figure's face slightly wrong, eyes, mouth misaligned, cut, figure suddenly gone, character turning rapidly in panic, multiple faint silhouettes appearing briefly in fog, shadow passing quickly across frame, close-up of eyes widening in fear, sound of footsteps behind, but no one visible, wide shot, at revealing figure now closer without movement, dead loved one appearing in fog, slowly walking forward, close-up of emotional reaction, shock and disbelief, figure smiling unnaturally, glitch effect where face briefly changes into something else, whispering voices overlapping from all directions, character covering ears as voices intensify, fog forming multiple human shapes around character, close-up of tears, mixing with moisture on skin, slow motion of character, stepping backward, multiple versions of same person appearing briefly in fog, fog clearing slightly, revealing broken version of town buildings twisted, decayed, abandoned wide shot of figures standing in every doorway, slow tracking shot through ruined street, close-up of empty eyes staring from shadows, bell tower emerging from fog in distance, low angle, shot of bell swinging slowly on its own, figures forming circle around main character, final wide shot, town fully consumed by fog again, ending shot, fog slowly swallowing everything into complete white emptiness.